Have you ever looked at a clock and wondered why time isn't divided into 12 segments? Each one are long. Let me tell you, this is the story of how the world was put on time. It all started during World War II. So when you pressed a key, it didn't produce the letter you'd expect. Instead, it scrambled your message into a jumble of meaningless letters. At Bletchley Park in England, a team of codebreakers led by a brilliant mathematician named Alan Turing worked tirelessly to crack the Enigma code. For 3 years, they struggled with almost no success. But in 1942, everything changed. You see, before they had computers, Turing and his team built a machine that could test thousands of possible messages in a matter of seconds. They called it the bomb. It was the first programmable computer, and after its invention, what had seemed impossible suddenly became possible. The team was able to read German communications, giving the Allies a crucial advantage. As the war raged on, the code breakers continued to improve their techniques. By the end of the conflict, they had shortened the war by 2 years, helping to save countless lives. But as the war drew to a close, so did their mission. The government saw no further need for code breakers once the Germans had surrendered. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. In the years since, historians have come to realize just how important the work of these code breakers was. They estimate that without the insights gained from Enigma, the war could have dragged on for another 5 years. During the time, millions more people would have lost their lives. The contributions of Turing and his team remained classified for decades. But eventually the truth came out and the world learned about the secret team that had helped win the war. Today, there are monuments dedicated to those who served at Bletchley Park. A new generation of computers is named after Alan Turing, and every year, there is a worldwide celebration of his birthday. But here's the thing, even though we know how important code breakers were to winning the war, there's still a lot that we don't know. For example, how did they do it? What was the secret behind cracking the Enigma code? Well, it turns out that the answer is more complicated than anyone expected. The Enigma machine wasn't just a tool for encrypting messages. It was a piece of art. It was beautiful and elegant, and its creators took great pride in their work. They wanted to make sure that no one could understand the messages they were sending, not even the most brilliant minds at Bletchley Park. The Germans had spent years perfecting their encryption methods, and they had come up with something that was truly special. The Enigma machine was made up of 3 wheels, each one containing a set of letters. The wheels were wired together in a complex pattern, and when you turned the first wheel, it caused the second wheel to rotate and the third wheel to rotate. As the wheels turned, the electrical current would flow through the wires and then through a light bulb, which would illuminate a letter. The machine was always changing the way the wheels were arranged, making it nearly impossible to decipher the messages being sent. In order to crack the Enigma code, the British needed to figure out how the wheels were arranged and how the electrical current was flowing through the wires. This would allow them to reverse engineer the encryption process and decode the messages being sent. At first, it seemed like an impossible task, but Turing and his team were determined to succeed. They knew that the Enigma machine was changing the way the wheels were arranged every day, so they needed to find a way to test thousands of possible combinations in a short amount of time. They tried using mechanical devices, but they were too slow. Then Turing had a brilliant idea. Why not use a machine to do the hard work? He designed a device that could test thousands of possible combinations in a matter of seconds. It was the first programmable computer. With this new invention, the British were able to stay one step ahead of the Germans. They could read their messages and anticipate their moves. The war was far from over, but the tide had definitely turned. So let's recap what we've learned so far. The Germans used the Enigma machine to encrypt their messages. The machine was incredibly complex, and its encryption methods were nearly impossible to break. But the British were up for the challenge. With the help of a brilliant mathematician named Alan Turing, they built a machine called the bomb that could test thousands of possible combinations in a matter of seconds. This allowed them to read German communications and shorten the war by 2 years. But you might be wondering, How did they keep the bomb a secret? After all, if the Germans had known that the British were reading their messages, they could have changed their encryption methods and made it much harder to decode their communications. Well, it turns out that Turing and his team took secrecy to a whole new level. In order to protect the bomb and the work being done at Bletchley Park, the British government took extraordinary measures. They created a whole new town near the park where they moved the workers and their families. The town was heavily guarded, and anyone who entered or left had to have a special permit. The workers were sworn to secrecy, and any mention of the park in letters or conversations was heavily censored. If word got out that the British were cracking the Enigma code, it could have had serious consequences. For example, the Germans could have developed a new encryption method that was impossible to break, or they could have targeted the people working at Bletchley Park, either physically or psychologically. The secrecy was so tight that even the workers' families didn't know what their loved ones were doing. It was a small price to pay for the safety of the park and its workers. As the war went on, the British code breakers continued to improve their techniques. They developed new machines that could test even more combinations in even less time. They also came up with ways to trick the Enigma machine into making mistakes, which made it much easier to decode its messages. In the end, the work of Turing and his team was successful beyond their wildest dreams. They were able to read almost every German message that was sent, which gave the Allies a huge advantage. They won the war and saved countless lives. And now you might be thinking, wow, that's amazing. But what does it have to do with time zones? Well, it turns out that the development of the bomb machine had a much broader impact than just winning the war. It also paved the way for the digital age. You see, the bomb machine was the first programmable computer. It was capable of performing complex calculations and making decisions based on the data that was inputted. This was a huge step forward for mathematics and science. All of a sudden, mathematicians had a tool that could help them solve some of the most complex problems in the world. One of the first uses for the bomb was breaking codes. As we've already discussed, the British were able to use the bomb to break the Enigma code and read German communications. This gave them a huge advantage in the war effort and likely saved countless lives. Another use for the bomb was in ballistics. The British were able to use the bomb to calculate the trajectory of bombs, which helped them to hit their targets more accurately. This was especially useful in the Battle of Britain when the Luftwaffe was bombing London and other major cities. But perhaps the most important use for the bomb was in the field of logistics. The British were able to use the bomb to track the movement of troops and supplies, which helped them to coordinate their efforts more effectively. This was crucial in winning the war because it ensured that the right troops were in the right place at the right time. The bomb machine was a technological marvel, and its impact was felt far beyond the walls of Bletchley Park. It helped to win the war and pave the way for the digital age. And now you might be wondering, what happened to the bomb machine? Well, it turns out that the story of the bomb machine is a bit of a mystery. When the war was over, the British government ordered that all the bomb machines be destroyed. This was done to prevent the Germans from getting their hands on this advanced technology. But not all the machines were destroyed. In fact, a few of them survived and are now in museums around the world. One is at the Imperial War Museum in London. Another is at the National Museum of American History in Washington, D.C., and a third is at the Deutsches Museum in Munich. If you're ever in one of these museums, be sure to check out the bomb. It has a fascinating piece of history and a reminder of the brilliant minds that helped to win the war. So now you know how the world was put on time and how the bomb machine helped to win the war. But the story doesn't end there. There are so many other interesting facts about time zones that we couldn't fit in this video. For example, did you know that there are actually 27 time zones around the world? Or that the international date line doesn't line up perfectly with the 180th meridian? Well, if you want to learn more about time zones, I highly recommend checking out the additional resources. We've included links to some great articles and websites. That will teach you everything you need to know about time zones. So go ahead, take a look, and learn a little something new. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit subscribe. We love bringing you fun and educational content about history and science. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.